Call our meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, July 10th, 2018. This is a regular monthly meeting of the Austin City Planning Commission. Looks like we have a couple of open public hearings and a sign appeal on our agenda for tonight. Before we get to that, ask the commissioners if looked at the minutes from our meeting of Tuesday, June 12th. Any changes or to make? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion on that.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lutz.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is an open public hearing to consider an application from Kirk and Debbie Thorpe, 503 27th Avenue Northeast, Austin, Minnesota, for a variance from City Code Section 11.01, Subdivision 1, limiting the total aggregate area of all accessory structures to 1,584 square feet for properties over 1 acre, located in an R1 single-family residence district. Petitioner is proposing to add a 40 foot by 60 foot storage building.
So they've modified their plan a little bit, and I'll go over that with you. So on the Elmo here, we have the area highlighted in yellow is the Thorpe's property, and they currently have a shed and a detached garage as well as their dwelling. They propose to add an additional garage. After the notices went out, they changed the dimensions to 40 by 48 instead of 40 by 60. Oh, yeah, is this not picking up? Okay. So the dimensions of the proposed garage or additional detached structure have changed to 40 by 48, approximately 14-foot walls with one 12-foot door. There is an example in your packet, and this would be, their structure would be smaller than this and would have only one garage door, but would be similar in the construction materials. And then the finishing would match their current structures that they have on their property, which you can kind of see. This is their existing detached garage, which is on the west side of the property. The Thorpes initially were considering adding the garage or detached garage if it were approved to this side of their property, but they've changed the plan to add it to this property, this end of their property, because they have a, it looks like kind of a drainage or culvert drainage. Okay, well, we hope that's not exactly. Just kidding. So anyway, there's some water here that would make it, and then it's closer to the road, that would make it maybe a little bit less desirable for a future home. So they'd like to, so initially when I spoke to them, I indicated that in order to be, well, let me back up a little bit. So our ordinance requires on a property that's over 1 acre, that the square footage of their detached structures be limited to 1,584 square feet. They currently have existing detached garage that is approximately 1,170 square feet. So that would give them about 400 square feet to work with, which the current proposed detached structure would exceed that by about 1,500 square feet. In order for the 1 acre to apply, and we also have a an ordinance that requires that there be a primary structure on the lot before a detached structure could be added, or an accessory structure. So these lots right now are not combined, and if the planning commission were to grant a variance, it should be with the condition that at least these lots be combined, which would be lots, it looks like 10, 11, 12, and 13. And then the petitioner would remove the shed so that he complies with our limit of 2 accessory structures, and would potentially sell or leave these 2 lots separate for potential sale in the future, which from a city perspective we would like. We do have some assessments here from when the sewer was added to that neighborhood. And that would become due when there was a structure added to either one of these properties that required city sewer. So essentially a home. This does give them also some flexibility in again, being able to sell that property if they decided to do so in the future. And then we are always looking for some additional housing in Austin, at least at this point. Let's see. So the property in question is over an acre with this proposed 1,920 square foot garage addition. The total lot coverage with the structures would be approximately 7%. That actually, though, that number included the entire area. So it would be still less than 40% coverage, which is the maximum allowed. When the Planning Commission decides whether a variance should meet or would meet statutory requirements, you should consider that the variance is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the zoning code, that the variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the provision, and that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the provision. The plight of the landowner is due to the circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. The variance will not permit any use that is not allowed in the zoning district where the affected land is located, and the variance will not alter the essential character of the surrounding area. And economic considerations alone shall not constitute an undue hardship. The area, I don't know if anybody had a chance to go out and look at the Royal Manor area. It is somewhat rural. The lot sizes vary. There does appear to be a number of properties with accessory structures that are much larger and greater in number than you would typically find in a downtown Austin neighborhood. The proposed use is a detached accessory structure, which would be allowed in this area in a residential zone. The petitioners have, I think it shows in one of these pictures here, they just have a recreation vehicle, and if they took down their shed, would have some additional storage requirements that they would be using the shed for. Let's see, is there anything else? The petitioners are here. If you have any questions for them, or if you have additional questions for me, feel free to ask.
Okay, are there any questions from the commissioners at this point?
Yeah, the 1.8 acres, that's all 6 lots combined, correct?
Yeah, it is, actually.
Where would the driveway to this structure be? Would it come off the current driveway, or would it go to the road as a separate driveway?
I would probably make one go to the road.
And that would be something that would have to be approved by the city. Unless that's a private drive, is that, I don't know if that's a private road in there? It might be, actually. It is city, okay.
Okay, so,
What about the variance to the drainage ditch? Is there, how much variance do you have on that?
I don't know of any issues with that particular, but I mean, that could be a condition that they check with the watershed district to make sure that there's no,
Flooding issues? or-
yeah, and any additional issues. I don't have that area as in floodplain at all, with regard to our FEMA maps. And I don't consider it, it's not considered as shoreland, not being a public water.
Mhm.
This is kind of a, kind of a strange configuration for this lot. Can you give us any context why we have such skinny parcels that are kind of stuck?
It's actually if you look, I don't know if you can see it on your copy, but there's some light blue lines.
Yep.
And then there's one missing between lots 12 and 13. But that delineates the actual, like, parcel where you would normally, like, each one of those would normally be a parcel that you build a house on. So you can buy, you know, if you have the means, as many parcels as you want in an area, and it might create a long, skinny property like that. But at this point, they're still separate lots, so they would need to combine enough of that property to create an acre to comply with what we're discussing right now. So they're proposing to leave 8 and 9 off for future sale or development. And combining, again, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
So if they were to sell 8 and 9, would the percent, I guess, does it matter, or does that come into consideration? If they were to sell those, how much percent of?
Yeah, they still wouldn't have, they would still wouldn't be over 40%
They would-
coverage.
okay.
No. No, and if they needed to keep a half of the lot, or, you know, so it could be a condition of, it has to be over an acre. And, yeah, just that it has to be combined to create an acre
The
of
remaining
property.
4 would be 1.2. Are they all third acre lots? They're all the same? All 6?
Yeah, you can see the dimensions on there, kind of. It's like 175 by 140, or no, wait. Nope, that's wrong. It's 85 by 140. And then we've got 100 by about 140. And then the lot 13 is a little bit odd shaped.
Well, it looks like 8 and 9 are the smallest, so they'd still be over. an
Yeah,
acre.
they would. Yeah, I agree.
But none of the lots are currently combined, not even 10 and 11?
I think I thought one of them was combined. No? Maybe I just put the little property hook on there because I want it to be combined. Yeah, so yeah, they should be combined. The accessory structure on lot 11 shouldn't have gone there without having the lots combined, but I'm not sure I'm sure this was in the county when it was first put up, and I'm not sure what their rules were at the time, but typically I know the current planner for the county would require that they be combined.
When was the house built?
79.
Garage at the same time?
No, the other garage was built later, I'm not sure.
any other questions? And this is an open public hearing, so if there's anyone here who would like to speak, now's the time.
So just to clarify, the new proposed structure would be on lot 12?
Correct.
This recommendation to council?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Well, I'm willing to make a motion that we recommend council to approve the request with the condition that lots 10, 11, 12, and 13 be combined.
okay, we have a motion to approve with those stipulations.
That's okay with what they're requesting.
Yeah, we'd spoken
That's-
about that
Okay.
before. they wanted to go ahead with the variance request and then combine the lots dependent on whether it was approved or not approved.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Have a motion to second from Commissioner Swenson. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Hold on.
What I wanted to clarify, did we need to get any approvals from the watershed district for this?
Oh, yeah, should add that on there, actually. Just at least to contact them for clarification of whether any additional requirements are necessary. Would be a prudent
So who would do that?
addition.
Who would do that?
We could just modify the motion, just add an additional condition, or recommendation as a condition, yeah.
Okay, with that addition to the motion and second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion?
It's good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting unless you would like to. And then we'll have it'll also go to council next Monday for final approval, or, whatever they decide.
Okay, our second item on our agenda, another open public hearing to consider a petition from Scott Ohm, 1605 First Avenue Northeast, Austin, Minnesota, to rezone the property from an A1 agricultural district to an R1 residential single-family district.
Okay, so this property is located near East Side Lake, actually just right across. Let's see, I think I have a photograph here. So it's just north of Hardy Mechanical, and I can't think of the name of the church that's nearby to the north.
Holy Cross, is that the
I think it is Holy Cross, yeah. So right now, this is the closest residential property, and then there's a triangle of property here.
And that is currently zoned,
It's currently zoned A1 agricultural, which is essentially like an open space conservation agricultural zone. The majority of the A1 property in the city of Austin is parks, and like Westcott Field, Todd Park, all of the parks. The only area that's privately owned that I know of that's agriculturally zoned is Stivers. And I think that they just came in as agricultural because of the business that they have.
okay.
So the property owner, Scott Ohm, was requesting he's had the property for sale for some time. I've gotten a few calls from people interested about what they could possibly use it for, as an agricultural property or considering purchasing and then rezoning. He talked about potentially looking at commercial or other uses as well. It seems that at least starting with residential would be a good fit for that area with the neighboring uses. The property to the west and the north is also agricultural and conservation. Some of that is owned by Holy Cross. I think all of it is owned by Holy Cross. East of the property is the residential, and then south is commercial and industrial, Hardy Mechanical area. The petitioner is asking to rezone and amend our future land use plan to suburban low density and change this zoning again from A1 agricultural conservation to R1 single family residential. The primary uses permitted in single family residential is pretty much what it describes. So residential 1 and 2 family dwellings. It actually allows farms, perennial grasses. We will be updating this hopefully in the next 2 years. Daycare facilities, group homes, foster homes, tenant towers. That would be unlikely in that area, but it is allowed under R1. Conditional uses would be churches, public facilities, publicly owned and operated facilities like parks, playgrounds, golf courses, swimming pools, and as well as private non-commercial recreation areas like country clubs, golf courses, swimming pools. Home occupations are allowed. Of course, in this instance, there is no home there at this point. Two-family dwellings and twin homes are allowed. Again, group homes are listed. Bed and breakfast. And then just normal accessory uses are allowed, which would be like your detached garages or sheds.
So from a residential perspective, without an additional conditional use permit later, it can only be single family or two family like townhomes and twin homes, right?
Right, yeah, it wouldn't be able, there wouldn't be
Higher
any,
density than that would be allowed without.
right, it would have to be zoned R2 for higher density, but it is a pretty small lot. Not sure if I have the acreage listed on here, actually. Do you know what the acre? 0.33 acres, okay. I have looked at the dimensions, and it would be sufficient to allow a single-family home. Our minimum square footage is 6,000 square feet. So the considerations, some of the considerations you should have in mind are the consistency of the proposed zoning with the goals and policies of our future land use map and comprehensive plan, the compatibility of the site with the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district, the compatibility of all the potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district with the surrounding uses, and zoning in terms of the suitability of the land, impacts on the environment, density, nature of use, traffic impacts, aesthetics, infrastructure, potential influence on property values, capacity of existing infrastructure and services sufficient to accommodate the use permitted without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of the residents, whether the use is permitted in the proposed zoning district will cause any detrimental impacts, that the boundaries of the requested zoning district are sufficient to meet the dimensional regulations for the proposed zoning, and that the ability of the applicant to satisfy any requirements applicable to the specific use imposed pursuant to zoning and land use regulation. So if somebody bought that to put a house on it, they would come back to the planning department and go through all of the, it depends on what kind of structure they want to build. So size would be limited based on the lot and the setbacks required for an R1 zone.
Okay, any questions at this point?
So this would be a recommendation to council to approve or deny a amendment to the future land use map for suburban low density and to rezone the current area from A1 to R1.
And would rezoning be in conformance with the comprehensive plan?
It's not right now, so the comprehensive plan would need to be amended. So our future land use map. I would say, I guess, I haven't included any of the background material from our comprehensive plan, but creating additional housing in the city of Austin is one of our goals. In that sense, it would be in compliance with our comprehensive plan.
I would imagine that we would have more potential with an R1 versus an A1 in that location.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't really do anything with an A1.
Well, this is an open public hearing, so if anybody would like to speak, now's the time.
You said that the only business around was at Hardy, or the mechanical, right?
Yeah, to the south. It's HVAC, plumbing, HVAC. I think they do a lot of other stuff too,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Is there a buyer in mind for this, or?
Yeah, I don't know that, I haven't heard of anything at this point.
Not being zoned in A1.
Right,
I know, but
they
I
really
mean,
haven't had any, like I said, there have been people who called me, expressing interest in the property.
If it was zoned as a
Yeah,
residential, like,
Yeah.
versus it being for a business?
right, I think there's just the uncertainty of having to go through this process, from a buyer perspective.
Is there any feedback from anyone in the neighborhood, including the church?
No, I did actually talk to this closest neighbor, and there has been some disputes between the two property owners from time to time. But I did speak to him in depth prior to the application to rezone. And so he was aware and didn't express any concerns about the residential zone. He hasn't called or come in since then. He has been to my office previously.
But not on matters related to rezoning?
No, and we specifically talked about that, just to make sure if, would there be any additional issues, if, just wanted him to know up front, this is what your neighbor is planning on doing with this property. Is that an issue? And he didn't seem to have a problem with that. And they've been agreeable on some of the problems that they'd had in the past. They've been able to work out, so things seem to be going in a positive direction there, so.
Maybe a structure in there in the middle.
Yeah, or a new owner, who knows, could make it better, could make it worse. It's hard to say.
Well, I guess my only question would be, is there a chance that whoever bought it would come back wanting to rezone it to something different? But
They
looking
could.
at the size of it, I'm not sure what else you could do with that size of property that would make any sense, that would fit anywhere.
Right, and that would be a conversation that I would have
Right,
with
yeah,
someone.
so-
I mean, sometimes I can talk them out of it, and sometimes they still want to come to planning and council.
Right, yeah, I mean, other than a residential house, I don't see what else would go on.
Do we know how it ended up being in A1?
So I think, are you the son of Scott? Okay, so can you come up and talk about? I guess at least answer that question.
So if you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
Bronson Ohm, 603 13th Avenue Northwest, Casson.
Thank you.
It was originally owned by the city, and I think two owners previous, because I used to own the home as well, right next door, and I kept the land after the house went. And the owner then bought it from the city at some point, I think in the early 2000s, late 90s. So it was a city, and then it went to that owner, but separate.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I will ask for a motion.
So this would be a recommendation to the council to approve or deny a amendment to our future land use map and rezoning of the area described in the materials.
I would make a motion to recommend to council to amend the future land use map for this prescribed area to an R1 as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Commissioner Postma.
I second that.
Have a second from Commissioner Caparell. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're down to, yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
All right.
Oh, yeah, that's your job.
Yes, the last item is a sign appeal to consider a request for the denial of a sign permit to the City of Austin, 710 21st Street Northeast, Austin, Minnesota, for the proposed placement of 3 signs on north, east, and west sides of hangar to clearly identify the building. Must be at the airport.
So yeah, if it doesn't meet our ordinance criteria, it's just an automatic denial. which this area, our airport, here, I'll get that on here. I think I have. Our airport is also zoned A1. And that I can't really describe why, but exactly. But
I
under,
like the airplane on it. It's a nice
can you tell where the, yeah.
747, right?
So the structure, I think is it this one right here? Or it's pretty close, or whoops, I mean up here, it's pretty close. It's right next to the office. Yeah. So the city of Austin owns the municipal airport. It's managed by another entity, and then we allow people to lease space and build hangars out in the airport. So they have privately owned hangars, like Hormel, for instance, has a hangar out at the airport, and now Valley Transportation has a hangar out at the airport. And for their purposes, they'd like to have their hangar identified to differentiate it from any other structures out in the airport area. I'll let it's Kyle, right? I'll let him describe, kind of what they have coming in and out that would need to know what specific building it is. I think obviously if it was just employees, that would probably be pretty easy to figure out, but the petitioners are proposing 3 wall signs. It's a very large structure, so even though the sign here is pretty big, it's 20 by 10, 200 square feet. It still looks a little small on that building, but does have meet the intended purpose of identifying the building. Under our city code, it was very strange doing the research for this because there are very limited signs allowed in an A1 district, and so it references me back to another area under Schedule 1. To plaques and advertising symbols not exceeding 4 square feet attached flat to a building to identify the building or its occupants. That, of course, would be insufficient in this particular situation. Well, I guess you can decide. So the signs would exceed the number allowed by 2 and the square footage by about 260 square feet. It didn't say that, actually. And I didn't see anything that said overall that was required. It was only in the business section of the sign code. So, and I guess at the airport or in an agricultural area, I'm not sure what, where the road would be exactly. So the signs also cannot exceed 15% of the front face of the building, which in this instance there's, covers a very small space. The signs cover a very small space compared to the actual face of the building. The purpose of limiting size and number of signs is to provide a uniform standard and to avoid confusion. Again, the hangar is located on city-owned property, and there were no objections from staff regarding the petition. And then, of course, it would go to council as well for their approval. Some of the things that you may want to evaluate based on variance standards would be that the sign request, due to unusual conditions pertaining to sign needs for specific building or lot, the sign would not create a hazard, the sign would not violate Minnesota statutes or rules and regulations developed pursuant hereto, which I am unaware of any. The sign would not be objectionable to adjacent property owners. The sign would not adversely affect residential property, and the sign would be in keeping with the general character of the surrounding area. And these are not illuminated, right? These are just flat, okay, just plain, yeah. So this, again, would be a recommendation to council for approval or denial of the sign appeal.
Okay,
Did the
any,
neighborhood get letters on this?
No, we don't send out letters for the sign appeal.
Just wondering, would the sign would not be objectionable to adjacent property owners? I wonder how they would even know.
Yeah, it would be people across 218 essentially
Yeah.
that would notice it, if anyone.
okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none. I will ask for a motion. And this is a recommendation, you said, to the city council?
Yes.
Okay, recommendation.
I'll make a recommendation, or a motion that we recommend the council to approve.
Okay. A motion approved from Commissioner Lutz,
I'll second.
second from Commissioner Swenson. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Do you have anything else for us tonight?
No, that's it.
Okay. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion, second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not anymore.
We went through this when we did the ones in the recycling center, remember that?
Well, yeah.
We have all kinds of cardboard, plastic.
Yeah, there was a lot of,
Since, I think, February.
yeah.
You can't have more than one sign. Can't even be a 4x8.
Yeah.
We have pretty tight sign